I'm here in New York and Allie's over in Michigan. And I'm curious where everyone else is joining us from. We've got Queens, a couple of New York folks, Tennessee, Astoria, Brooklyn, a lot of New York folks, Beacon, New York, Toronto. Awesome. So we've got folks from all over, more New York, Texas, Oklahoma, Queens. Awesome. Great. Lots of folks from all over. And out of curiosity, did anybody register for the LSAT-Flex today? The May LSAT-Flex, the registration was today. I'm wondering if anyone signed in and was scheduling this morning or around noon. I know there was a lot of chaos around that, and I hope you all were able to successfully register, those of you taking in May. Got some folks saying they registered, some going for August, some going for June or July. So we've got a mix of folks here. Cool. Awesome. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. For those who don't know me, coming from Allie's end, my name is Steve Schwartz. I run the LSAT blog. I also host the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel and podcast. I've been teaching the LSAT for about 15 years now, and I've never seen so many changes to the LSAT in such a short time. First, the digital LSAT rollout last year. Now the new LSAT-Flex, which I don't think anybody was expecting to have the LSAT online in such a short time. And we'll dive in more to that in just a moment. But first, I want to have Allie join us and share a little bit about herself and where she's from. Hey, Allie, how you doing?
Yeah, hi. Hi, good to be here. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Yeah, I think, Steve, the last time we spoke, we were like, oh, what's happening, digital LSAT? And I don't think we could have obviously ever expected this craziness to happen. So it seems like things are just constantly changing. And, you know, one of the best characteristics a law student and a lawyer can have is to be adaptable and to adapt. So, you know, that's what we're having to deal with here. So again, welcome to everyone. I'm Allie Nash. I am the Director of Law School Admission Counseling at Stratus Admissions. If you don't know about Stratus, we've been around since 2006. We offer law admissions counseling, business admissions counseling, and graduate school admissions counseling. So I'm very happy to be there. Prior to that, I graduated from law school at University of Iowa. I'm a proud Hawkeye. In 2002, so it's been a while. And from there, I went on to work at a big law firm in my home state of Michigan. Did some corporate real estate, small business kind of stuff, but loved being on the recruiting committee there. So I got to go to OCI and law schools and interview candidates and be a part of that whole summer associate kind of deal. And I fell in love with kind of the soft aspects. So when my personal life took me to Tucson, Arizona, the University of Arizona College of Law took a chance on a corporate attorney from Michigan and hired me as their assistant director of admissions. And then I worked my way up to director of admissions and financial aid, and eventually dean of admissions and financial aid. So I was there for several years. My personal life, once again, took me across the country, and I decided it would be wonderful to try to use those skills that I had acquired on the other side of the desk to help students who are looking to pursue their dream of law school. So that's what brought me to Stratus, and I'm super excited to be here and share some of the things that I've learned along the way.
Awesome, Allie. Well, I'm glad to have this conversation with you where we could talk through some of all the recent changes related to how coronavirus is affecting the LSAT world with LSAT-Flex. And then, of course, on the law school admissions side, because there's tons of changes there I'd love to get your take on as well. So for everyone joining us tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to chat for a bit about the LSAT-Flex. Allie's going to ask me some questions around all the changes there. I'm going to ask her a bit about how coronavirus is affecting things on the law school admissions side. And then we'll open it up to a general Q&A and do our best to address all your questions as they come up. So Allie, what are some of the questions you're getting from applicants around the LSAT-Flex, all the changes going on there?
Yeah, so today was a day, right? So how did the LSAT-Flex sign up go today for me?
Yeah, so the LSAT-Flex sign up, it was pretty chaotic, honestly. And the whole process from the beginning, it was initially going to be Wednesday last week, then it was going to be Thursday last week, and then due to some things on ProctorU's end, they had to reschedule it to today on Monday. It was going to be around 12 p.m. Eastern time, and LSAC was going to send out an email blast to all applicants, which they eventually did. But it turned out there was a backdoor way to sign up early that I discovered this morning, where you could reset your password on a ProctorU site and be able to actually register before everybody else. And so once I learned of that, of course, I had to notify all of the people who follow me on Facebook and Instagram and such. And so it was chaotic because people were grabbing slots and then others weren't able to log in. And eventually everyone got to get their times, I'm hoping at least. And so that was pretty wild. I'm hoping things will be smoother going forward. But basically, most folks are going to take the LSAT-Flex on Monday and Tuesday between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern. You can book a time anywhere within that range. And then accommodated test takers can schedule to take it throughout the rest of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, based on their unique situation. So yeah, pretty wild situation.
Ask about that. Yeah, I was going to ask about the accommodation. So the LSAT-Flex is able to offer that for,
yeah, at least for a lot of cases. I mean,
takers.
things like extra time, that's simply a matter of adjusting the countdown timer on the online LSAT-Flex site. One issue, of course, could be things like bathroom breaks, because if you're taking a 2-hour test for security, they actually require you to sit there the entire time. I just got confirmation from Proctoring on this today that you can't get up in the middle of section 2 to go to the bathroom, even if the clock is still ticking, the way you could at an in-person administration. And so basically I'd say, don't drink a lot of coffee before you start. For accommodated test takers who have much longer exams that maybe they have time and a half or double time, they're not going to make you go 3.5, 4 hours without a bathroom break. So I'm guessing they're just making an exception in that case. But for the vast majority of folks, they're going to have to hold it. And like I said, go easy on the diuretics.
So with the LSAT-Flex, how is it different from the regular LSAT?
Well, the biggest difference I would say is, aside from it being at home and being online, is that it's 3 sections, not 5. So for the regular LSAT, most folks probably know it's 4 scored sections plus 1 experimental. The 4 scored sections being 1 logic games, 1 reading comp, and 2 logical reasonings. On the LSAT-Flex, they've removed one of the logical reasonings and there's no experimental section. So it's only 3 sections back to back, 1 of each. And you're done.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's the biggest format change. And on top of that, they also confirm that each question's weighted equally, which means that logical reasoning matters a little bit less on the LSAT-Flex than it does on the regular LSAT. So that might change things a little bit in terms of prep.
Well, speaking of prep, how should students prep for the LSAT-Flex?
Well, I think folks, first off, you want to address that in your study plan where like I said, you're focusing more on games and reading comp, a little bit less on logical reasoning on average overall, but also simulating test day. Endurance matters a little bit less, and being warmed up and ready to go when you start matters a lot more. I've always recommended do some warm-up questions before you start, like a game, a passage, a couple of logical reasoning questions, nothing too crazy, but a little bit, just so that when you actually hit go, you're ready to dive right in, because every question matters just a little bit more. Then there's things like simulating test day in terms of your desk setup, where you're sitting, and also using the computer, not a tablet, making sure your internet connection is strong so you don't have any issues with that either.
There's a lot of things that LSAC is going to have to, I think, handle and deal with as this goes along. I'm hoping for the best, absolutely, as I'm sure everyone is here.
Yeah, same. So I was telling folks to register for Tuesday if they can, so that in case things happen on Monday, they can hear about it early. And anyone, by the way, who's listening, who's registered for Monday already, I'm hoping things will go smoothly, of course, but try to at least hear, if you're not the 9 a.m. person Monday, try to go online and see what others are saying before you actually start, just so that you can learn of any potential issues and try to address them beforehand. Like if your cat runs into the background or something, is that a security issue? Is it not? Figuring out all of that.
One thing that you mentioned was the endurance portion of it. And it seems like, that's not something I hear a lot about, I suppose, with the regular LSAT prep. But I would think that's a maybe an advantage here to taking, the Flex, because it is so much shorter.
I would totally agree with that. I think it's definitely a more pleasant test day experience to do 3 sections and not 5, and do it at home. For most folks, assuming that your home environment is a suitable place to study and take the exam, I think that's preferable, those things being a given, of course. But yeah, 5 sections, even my brain is often fried after doing that. It's a lot. It's a full experience, 3 sections, a short break, 2 more sections. That's over 3 hours. So if you could be done in 2 hours instead, to me, that's definitely easier and easier to get through, for sure.
Yeah. How do you recommend that students start studying for the test, for the Flex specifically?
My general recommendations on prep from the beginning wouldn't change that much, because the content of the exam is still the same. It's just the format that changes a little bit. The delivery mechanism, with it being online, So a lot of it stays the same. I mean, even your books are still largely relevant. The parts where they differ are if they address taking it in person or if they address taking it on a tablet, that's going to be different. But overall, I'd say not much really changes. The biggest thing I would say, though, is get the official LSAT Prep Plus from LSAC, where they have the vast majority of the exams in the digital LSAT format, which is the same software as the LSAT-Flex. So the features like highlighting, underlining, the countdown timer, ability to change line spacing and text size, all of that is the same as the digital LSAT. And you can simulate it on official LSAT Prep Plus. You're getting the majority of exams for only $99 a year, which is actually cheaper than getting the books. So to me, that's a no-brainer. Whether you're doing the digital LSAT or the Flex, I would use those for the actual full-length exam prep.
Excellent. So, one question that I've received as well is, should I take the LSAT Flex or should I take the regular LSAT? Which one should I go with? And, from the questions that I can answer on that is how will admission committees look at the LSAT Flex, right? But from your perspective, and I can answer that too, but from your perspective, which one should they take if they have a choice? And maybe they don't have a choice because who knows when the regular one will be offered again, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. We don't really know what's going to happen going forward. So This may be a limited time opportunity. So if somebody is ready to take the LSAT, I would say in most cases, they should go for the Flex because it's a more pleasant experience, assuming, again, home environment being good, internet being good, and all of that. Where I would say take the regular is if logical reasoning is by far your strongest section and games and reading comp are weaker, then I'd say hold out for the in-person, assuming it's offered again in the near future, because the in-person would play to the strengths of somebody who's really good on logical reasoning. Otherwise, games and reading comp. And we could talk more about this, but my understanding, of course, from admissions and from everybody is that admissions treats it the same. So it doesn't really matter which one you go with from that perspective, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great point about thinking about the sections and kind of making some determination based on that. From the admissions perspective, you're absolutely right. I think admission committees in law schools generally are going to look at them the same. They trust LSAC, in the test and kind of putting together the questions and making sure that it's an accurate representation to the extent that it was before of whatever it tests your competency, I suppose, and your ability to do okay in your first year of law school. I think also, if there's ever, I would say if there's ever, from an admissions perspective, a test to try to take when you're ready, and perhaps something goes wrong or it's new. And I think admission committees are going to understand that too. I think they're going to, if you write the proper addendum, and explain what happened, that cat that ran behind you and jumped on your head and oh my gosh, and your score doesn't reflect what you think it could. I think that it's a test that you could probably explain, and there's going to be some grace that goes along with that. So.
Yeah, I think admissions, I would imagine they're going to understand that this is a unique situation, especially for those taking it in May being the first time. Obviously, the first time doesn't always go as smoothly. And there are ways to address it. Like I mentioned the cat example somewhat in jest because the Proctor actually says it's okay to have your pet in the room.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, and they have humans review anything that's flagged for security reasons. But let's say your roommate's really loud and you told them be quiet and they didn't listen, and that could affect things. Obviously, that's a unique circumstance. You could explain it, but also retake.
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of security and proctoring, can you tell me a little bit about that? Tell us a little bit about how that, I know that's a big concern in admissions and probably with regard to the test takers.
Yeah. I've gotten so many questions about this and things about cheating and such, but just in general, cheating on the LSAT is kind of tough to do because even if you had secret notes written down with formulas and things that you couldn't memorize, the LSAT's a test of reasoning. So those are going to be a very limited usefulness, especially on such a strictly timed exam. It's like law school exams are open book. How much does that really help? You still got to write your own thing, right? So, and you still have the time constraint at the same time. So I don't see it being that much of a benefit no matter what anybody could do unless they got a copy of the exam in advance. So regardless, of course, Proctoring, the company hired to handle the security and the administration of this, they are monitoring everybody with a webcam and a microphone. They're recording all of it. And they have what they call AI to monitor things like eye movement and such, which sounds kind of spooky, but I mean, if we're on video calls anyway, we're probably being recorded somewhere anyway, right? I mean, we're recording this, right? So things being recorded for later potential review. And they look at it if the cat runs around or if your eyes are off the screen for too long, they'll be like, what was that person looking at? Or if there's other noises in the background, they also have you show your room with the webcam to make sure there's nobody else in the room or no books that are open or anything. Your desk is pretty clear. So they're looking at all of that. They also, this company, this is not their first time doing an exam. They're also doing the GRE and the GMAT and high school advanced placement tests and a handful of other things too. So they've got it figured out. They've got it figured out. And I wouldn't try to cheat, by the way. They will catch you. It's not worth the risk.
Yes, please don't cheat. I mean, that's a very bad idea as you're trying to head into law school.
Yeah.
That's the worst idea. Well, thank you for that. So what advice do you have for students, leading up a week to the test? What do you recommend?
I'd say take a handful of practice tests, just like you would for the digital LSAT, just like you would for the paper and pencil LSAT if you're taking that outside North America. It's a couple of exams with detailed review. The difference being for LSAT-Flex, 3 sections, not 5. It's that simple. 3 sections, not 5, review them. Maybe you could do 2 exams in a week instead of 1 because it's not as taxing and you'll have more time to review the exams that you complete since there's less material on them. Longer term, if you're not sure which format you'll take, do some 3-section exams, do some 5-section exams just to get a mix and be ready for anything. But that's really it. And again, same home environment, same desk, same computer, same device. And then also run through your test day routine like bathroom, water, tea, coffee, breakfast, snacks, whatever you're doing. And by the way, take it at the same time of day. Previously, it was morning or afternoon. Now we've got a much wider range of times, 9 a.m. Eastern to 7 p.m. Eastern. You could start at any time depending on what you booked. So take your practice tests at the same time. And hopefully you were able to book a time that plays to your strengths. Some people are morning people, some people are not. And so if you got a time you want, congratulations, that works for you. Just do more exams at that exact same time of day.
That's great advice. That's great advice. So at this point, the signups are for May. We don't know going forward. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have no idea what's going to happen going forward, except my understanding at least is that there's no way the June LSAT could go forward in person. It's scheduled for June 8th, which is feeling pretty soon right now, given where we're at with the pandemic. And Virginia, for example, has a stay-at-home order till June 10th. So assuming they don't roll that back and open everything up sooner, I don't see how folks in Virginia could take it in person. I'm expecting other states will also extend the stay-at-home orders most likely. At least a lot of them will. So I expect that will be canceled and rescheduled as an LSAT-Flex sometime in the following month. July, maybe a bit more likely. August, maybe even more likely. But nobody really knows. We'll see what happens as things go forward. And LSAC takes a while to decide on these things. They took a while to decide and cancel the April LSAT, even though it was kind of apparent to most other people it couldn't possibly go forward. They were really hopeful, I guess, and they didn't want to have to roll out the Flex so quickly. But we'll see. I expect that they will also announce a deadline by which they will decide on June fairly soon. And we'll see. But June, folks, I would say prepare for Flex. See what happens. July is up in the air. And if you want to do Flex, by the way, I'd say register for June because that is highly likely to be canceled and rescheduled as a Flex. So that may be, if you couldn't do May, that may be your only opportunity to do Flex if you want to do it.
But is there a deadline for signing up for the June LSAT at this point? Are signups started? They're done? How are they looking generally?
I'm pretty sure June signups the deadline's passed already on that one. I'd have to double check. Folks could Google it, but I'm pretty sure the June deadline is already passed. The deadline for July is May 28th. So if you want to do July, you still got a while to decide on that one, but June I think is passed already.
I was just thinking of the timing for the results of the May LSAT. So that's coming in beginning of June. Is that right? The results
So June 5th for the May LSAT Flex. Everyone's getting decisions on this at the same time, whether they're taking it Monday or Tuesday of that week or any other day. June 5th is the proposed date. LSAC has not committed 100% to that date, but they're very hopeful it'll be on that date.
Excellent. Thank you so much for answering the questions that I had.
Of course.
Very valuable.
Of course. Thanks for discussing those with me. So I'd love to ask you some questions on the admission side of things. I'm wondering, first of all, I mean, the admission situation, it seems like there's folks who are winning, folks who are losing, but it's all kind of up in the air with pros and cons. So I'm wondering, is it going to be more competitive, less competitive? How should applicants be viewing this in terms of how it affects their admissions prospects specifically?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that I was actually wondering, those who are on the call tonight, where are you in this cycle? I wonder how, because to me, we're separated right now into two discussions. One, those who are in the fall 2020 cycle, so they're planning to attend this coming up fall, and 2021 and beyond. And so I think there are different considerations for both of those folks. So if anyone out there wouldn't mind jotting down in the chat, where you're at, if you're fall 2020, fall 2021, maybe you're beyond, maybe it's very early for you. That'd be great. I'm very curious about that. Generally speaking, I think I'll start with the fall 2020 here. Schools right now are really facing some challenges, and if you're reading up on higher education news, which I don't know, or maybe it's just mainstream news at this point, but schools are really hurting, and especially the big universities. I mean, millions of dollars at this point. I think U of M reported like $1 billion that they're losing. So and that really trickles down to the law school level. And so what law schools are thinking right now for fall 2020, which I see a lot of you are in that boat here, is how are we going to get bodies in the seat? What's going to happen here? And I think their fears are real. And I think they should be, nervous about that, because what's happening is the folks that have planned on going in fall 2020, they might now be considering deferring for a number of reasons. Maybe the prospect of online school is just not attractive to them. Maybe for personal considerations, family, health, financial. There's a number of reasons that this might not be the right time for them to go in the fall. So schools are going to feel the effect of that. International students might not be able to get their visas at this point to attend. I know that's going to affect primarily, the LLM programs and beyond, but for JD students as well, that's going to be a real issue. So, schools are not going to see those students, and folks who maybe aren't going to apply or going to reapply next year. So there are a number of factors that they're really trying to, an online school on top of that. Their schools right now are planning a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, plan Z, plan D, and on, because they don't know. Maybe it's going to be a hybrid. Maybe we're going to social distance in the classroom. Maybe we're going to take temperatures before we go. Who knows? I honestly don't. And I have really kind of gone back and forth on my thoughts on whether it was going to be, I'm just one person, but whether or not it's going to be an online situation, what are the chances? And I'm kind of 50-50 on it at this point. And maybe 51-49, I'm not sure. But I think it's a fair guess that this is going to, we're going to have to move to an online semester in the fall. So schools are considering that. So, what does that mean to this fall 2020 applicant pool? A benefit, I think, is in the waitlist candidates. So those who have applied and are on waitlist at schools, I think that schools are going to move to their waitlist. I think it's going to take longer. I think everything's taking longer. There are still students who haven't heard, from schools who applied way back in February, January. They're still waiting on decisions. So everything's kind of pushed back and delayed. So my advice to those who are on waitlist at this point would be to hang tight. Hold on. If that's your dream school, and if it's a top school and you can wait the last possible date, be patient. It may pay off, and I think it will pay off more than you have a good chance, more than you've had in the past, I think. But there are some things that you can do as a waitlist candidate also, and that would be just be strategically in touch with the admissions office. Don't be one of those waitlist candidates who are on the list that, they got their decision and then the admissions office never heard from them again. Make sure to look up the school's seat deposit deadline. Perhaps the first one's passed at this point. Maybe there's a second one. Maybe the first one is still there. But correspond with the office, turn in that letter of continued interest to the admissions office at a strategic time. So when they're ready to go to the wait list, that's, you're top on their list, and you're on their mind because you just sent them an updated resume and a letter stating that they're your top choice, and you're going to commit, if you get admitted. That means something to them, and it certainly means something to them this year. So I think that for waitlist candidates, this could be a beneficial year for you. I'd say for admitted candidates, so again, some folks who have been admitted haven't heard from certain schools, or they haven't visited, of course. So they're having a hard time making a decision. So I'd say a couple things to them. First, talk to the admissions office and see if you can get your seat deposit deadline extended. I think that schools more this year than ever are being flexible. Now, I will say in my experience so far, they're being flexible, but they're not being super bendy. So in other words, they're not going crazy with the flexibility, even though they might say they are, they're not. So just, they're being flexible. They might give you a little if you ask, but definitely be in touch with them. Don't be afraid to be in touch with them. And, if you're affected financially by what's going on and you have committed to a school, but you're having a hard time coming up with, for example, the seat deposit money, be in touch with the admissions office. Let them know that, you're having a hard time, and they certainly might waive. I've had a client where they waived the seat deposit entirely. Now, keep in mind, they're going to ask you to sign that enrollment form still. And I want you to be very cautious about this and very careful in what you're signing your name to, because, if you are thinking of applying to multiple schools and maybe putting deposits down at a couple schools, your enrollment form might prevent you from doing that at a certain school. Some of them are very strict. So I just want you to make sure to read that language carefully. You are, after all, applying to law school, and you're expected to read very carefully and get immersed in the details. So be careful there. The last group might be those who haven't applied yet that could benefit from this situation. So again, if you're going for a school that has a deadline that is out, make sure you check on those deadlines. Maybe you need to get them extended. Maybe you're taking the LSAT to apply for this cycle still. Just make sure to keep in touch with the admissions office and let them know what you're up to. And, you can stay on track. I think that more than ever, admission offices are going to be flexible. They're going to be flexible, but not completely bendy, but flexible. So that's a good thing. The other thing, when I worked in admissions, I had the opportunity to be there when enrollment was way up. And then I had the opportunity to be there when enrollment took a real dive. And so it's interesting how creative schools get with their enrollment and their programs when they're trying to get bodies in the seats. So maybe you could take advantage of some of their creative programs that they're employing. I expect, my guess is that transfers will be up. The schools may be more generous with their transfers this year because they're getting people, meaning tuition. They're not having to count for, ranking purposes or reporting purposes, maybe the lower than median LSATs or that kind of criteria. And they don't necessarily have to give the scholarships that they would have otherwise. So schools are looking for ways like that. So transfer, when I was in admissions, when enrollment was low, we were the first school that created the JD Advanced Standing. So that was the, for international students to get them their credit. And so that was a creative way to get students in, a little bit more money, tuition, and win-win for everyone. So ASU has had a program and currently has a program that's pretty interesting. And kind of like a dream come true maybe for some folks, that you can apply for their JD program without a standardized test score. Interesting, right? So it's actually a path through the Masters of Legal Studies Honors Program. So basically what you do, and I haven't talked to them directly, so you can research this further if you're interested, but you can apply to their JD program and you'll automatically be considered for the Masters of Legal Studies Honors Program. So if you don't get into their JD program, you can apply without an LSAT, without a GRE. And if you don't get into their JD program, you can get into their master's program. And for one semester, you will have classes with their JD students, and they will and if you are in the top 50% of the grade of the class, then you will get admission without a standardized test, without the LSAT, without the GRE, in the spring semester. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting. It's a very interesting way to go about doing it. And, you know, there are a lot of ABA, American Bar Association, rules that they have to comply with. One of them is that you have to have tell me the word.
A valid and reliable admission test, right?
Valid and reliable admission test. And so LSAT is certainly that. Recently, as you know, in recent years, the GRE has turned into that. So a lot of schools accept the GRE now. That's hasn't been challenged by the ABA. So this is another way. This is another, ASU says, their argument is, what better test than one semester of law school with law students to prove that you have the competency to be a JD student. So isn't that interesting?
I find it very interesting.
Yeah.
They have creative interpretation of the ABA rules there. I do have a question for you, though, Allie, around this. Unsurprisingly, I'm not a huge fan of this kind of program. And one concern I have is, let's say an applicant doesn't want to do the LSAT, doesn't want to do the GRE either. They apply to this program.
Yeah.
What kind of flexibility are they going to get with regard to scholarship money if ASU law knows this person couldn't possibly have applied to pretty much any other school?
It's a great question. I think that, so from what I've read is, I don't know that they're going to get extra money, but I do believe, do your own independent research here, but they are going to give you a scholarship in the same amount of your first semester tuition at the master's level of tuition, so that you're not paying more than a law student. So, you know, that's what I know.
Well, I'm glad you raised it.
How you think of it, not exactly a merit-based scholarship, but they are making it even. Yeah.
I do have another question on something you touched on earlier, which is around being willing to wait until the very end of the cycle, let's say like August, or maybe even the first week of September, where you get off the wait list last possible second and you start a program at your dream school. You're suggesting, what I gathered is that you're suggesting that applicants may want to still put down, seat deposit deadlines are now-ish, right? They're varying and they're extending them. Would you suggest that applicants be willing to put down a non-refundable seat deposit at risk of potentially losing that $500 or whatever it is, and then wait out the summer? Maybe they still get off the wait list somewhere else.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes, I am suggesting that. You know, again, this is a very important point to that. Make sure you read that enrollment form, and make sure you understand what you're committing to when you put that seat deposit down. Now, usually when you put that, when you complete that enrollment form, it has nothing to do with wait list, your status on the wait list. Basically, you're saying if it's a very strict one that you're not, you haven't put down a commitment at another school. So that doesn't have anything to do with the wait list because you haven't put a commitment down in that situation. But be careful of that. I can't overemphasize that. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's all very individual. It's all very personal to you. If it really is your dream school, and you are willing to make those, you know, sacrifices, and I would say $500 is a small amount, you know, when you're thinking about a 3-year education and, you know, everything that you've dreamt it could be and everything it might be, the potential of having that degree at the end of the day.
Right, of course. Yeah. And I would imagine
that's very hard. I think that's very hard, you know, to move in August or September, but I've certainly seen it. And I don't think it's crazy.
And you actually may not have to move at all if things are online in the fall.
That's exactly right.
I do have one question. We were talking a lot about the benefits around how folks in each cohort, those starting this fall, those starting next fall and beyond, how they could benefit. But one big question I'm getting from folks is, how competitive will next cycle be, given a potential recession? Right. Yeah. So those aiming to start law school fall 2021. Will it be more competitive as it was back in after the 2008 recession, or is this something totally different? Obviously, nobody knows, but curious to get your take.
Sure. Great question. And what everyone wants to know, just a bit on history, right? the Great Recession, 2008. So what happened there is that enrollment went up because, the reasoning is, okay, I don't have a job. I don't have a good prospect for a job. Law school, I'm going to ride this out. We're going to see what happens. And I'm going to go to school for 3 years. And, that worked out. And so I would say that that's not a bad plan. If I'm giving advice without answering your question yet, I would say that that's not a bad plan and this is a big if law school is your passion. I would definitely recommend not going forward with that plan if you're like, oh, shoot, I lost my job. What am I going to do? Hey, you don't need any kind of special undergrad degree for law school. Why not? Don't do that. And I tell you that we've seen that, and I would say that it's very transparent. It's very hard to cover up that kind of theme or story in an application. So I would definitely not recommend that. But I would say that it's a perfectly good time if law school's been on your mind and it's your passion. It's a great time to go forward. So okay, so we've got history that suggests that may happen, and that typically happens or sometimes happens in economic downturns. We also have that coupled with those folks who may defer for this cycle, right? So they're deferring a year, those who are reapplying perhaps, and those international students, don't underestimate, them and their volume, and they should come back. At this point, they're going to have their visas and they're going to be able to. So in theory, all those things combined suggest it's going to be a more competitive year. So I would guess, if I had to guess, if you made me guess, I would say that it would probably be a more competitive year. But there is something I think that's a little bit different about this. And I do want to mention it. I do think there's something a little different than past situations, because there is a big personal and social component to this. And it's not just about, it's not just about the finances. It's about family, and it's about health. And maybe it'll look a little different in that maybe folks will choose more regional schools closer to family. I don't think we've certainly not seen the financial implications of this. I mean, we are at the very beginning as far as that's concerned. So how that affects down the line, I think, is still to be seen. So I'm not as convinced as some people that it's going to be, the most competitive year, fall 2021 and beyond. But it's a real possibility. Yeah.
And how do you think about the benefits and drawbacks of starting law school online this fall versus waiting? I mean, 1L being such an important time, and social aspects being such an important aspect of it as well, and folks going online, they're missing out on a lot of that, right? But they're still paying the same price, presumably, unless they can get more tuition scholarships. So how does that play into the decision around whether to go this fall or to wait?
Yeah, it's interesting. The second point that you made about tuition being the same for the fall, I wonder if that's going to be true for sure. I wonder. I don't know. But that's something to think about as well. It is, having gone through it myself, and it is a very special time to be part of that 1L experience. And it's where you get your group, you socialize, you acquaint yourself with the library and the books and the hard work and the grueling professors, and you really commiserate with your people. Not to mention networking for internships and all those other things that are also very important. But everyone's in the same boat. Everyone in this year, in this fall 2020, is in the same boat. And I've heard it said before, and I completely agree with it, that I have great confidence in this group who's grown up with technology, unlike we've ever seen any group before, could make those connections virtually. I have confidence in the schools as well. I do. I think they're going to pull it together, and I think they're going to come up with, I think they're going to come up with a good plan and good opportunities, comparable opportunities perhaps to what they had before in person. I mean, it's not going to be exactly the same, of course, but it can't be. And again, just that, everyone's in the same boat here. Everyone's in the same boat here. Not exactly the same boat, but a similar boat, and everyone's trying to accommodate. So yeah, I know that's disappointing, but I think the schools are going to be I think the schools are going to be ultra flexible too. I think that's something that you can count on. I think they're going to be very understanding and flexible. And that's unique for law school. A lot of flexibility. I mean, it's kind of an antiquated, profession, and everything is, kind of based on a lot of history. And so this is new and it's scary for everyone, but I think everyone's going to adjust. So my advice, if you're curious, is that I would say if this is, your dream school and this is your dream and this is your opportunity, I wouldn't hesitate to go, because I do have faith. I do have faith in you and the schools to make it a really great experience.
They're certainly going to be giving it their all.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I want to talk just 1 second about deferring. I touched upon that a little bit, but I want to make sure that everyone really understands what deferring means. Schools have to approve your deferment request, and that means it's not an opportunity to go off for a year, retake the LSAT, and apply other places. That means you're really committing to that same school for the next year. So with or without scholarship, depending on the terms. So I just want to, it's something to not go into lightly, I think. And the same with reapplying. If I could just take 30 seconds to say that's also something not to go into lightly, because you could apply next year or the year after with exactly your same LSAT, GPA, personal statement, and you might not get into the school that you have gotten into this year. It's a new set of applicants. It's a new cycle. It's a new year. Maybe it's going to be more competitive next year, So I would just be very thoughtful about doing either of those things. Thoughtful about the whole process.
Well, thank you for that. I'm also wondering, with regard to schools' flexibility and everyone being in the same boat, how are they? We touched on this briefly about the LSAT-Flex. So if anything else you could share on that, as well as the spring 2020 transcripts, given school moving online and being pass-fail, are they being understanding, or are they looking at anything a little bit more closely, or are they just giving everyone a pass?
Yeah, I'm, from what I understand from every admission professional I've spoken with and heard from, they're being very understanding about the pass-fail that almost everyone has in their spring 2020 semester. So, I wouldn't worry too much about that. I'd make sure you passed as a baseline. Make sure you get that P instead of that F. That says something. And also the best thing that you can do, and I know we're kind of past that, but I mean, really, if you can get a letter of recommendation from one of your professors that had you during that time, it'd be a real plus, especially for those candidates who are really counting on the spring 2020 semester to perhaps boost their GPA to make them a little bit more competitive in the law school admission process. So if you can get a letter of recommendation from a professor that you had, that'd be really helpful. I would also say if there's some circumstances that you want to explain also, maybe you did get an F instead of a P, and maybe it was just out of your control because of personal circumstances or, whatever. This is a very, this is the time where folks are being understanding. I don't think any admission committee would look at one semester alone for sure. They're going to look at everything. They're going to look at your entire transcript. They're going to look at all your semesters. If there's a time to do well on the LSAT, this is the time also, though, because what you're trying to show with your transcript is your ability to do well in law school. And that's exactly what the LSAT helps to show as well. So if there's a time to say, hey, you know what, please look at my LSAT rather than my transcripts, to the extent you can spend time on your LSAT, that's a real plus.
Certainly. Yeah. Thanks for that. And last question, then we'll go to some of the Q&A for a few.
Sure.
Speaking of how everyone's stuck at home, they're quarantined, stay at home, can't do a whole lot on the extracurriculars except maybe online. What can they be working on now to set themselves up with the parts of the application for success when they do apply?
That's a great question. So I would say first and foremost, what you should be doing with this time is to just take care of yourself, right? Take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of your loved ones, take care of your pets, take care of yourself. I don't know if you know this about me, but I am also a yoga teacher. So I believe in breath. Take a breath, take a walk, go to the park, do what makes you happy, and make sure that you're in a good space. And very important is also to be productive. Be productive in the right way. Show that you have, use your time wisely, and that means perhaps studying for the LSAT, taking that extra time, taking those extra practice tests, following Steve's plan. Do those things that are really going to benefit you, and it's going to have a big impact on your law school application. If you're past that, or you're looking, if that's not the right thing for you to do, if you're applying for fall 2021, you are in such a great shape right now to start on your law school applications. And I don't want anyone out there to underestimate the time that it takes to put together your application. Your application theme, your essays. That's not just sitting down and drafting out a quick personal statement and diversity statement. I mean, and especially in a competitive cycle, but any year, and even if you have the best numbers, you really want to spend time and going through that. Some other thoughts, get excited about school. This is a moment of time, get really excited about school. Start to look into those schools, go beyond rankings, dig into the details, dig into what's important to you, really start to be introspective about that. And be productive. Connect with other students in the same boat as you, perhaps. You're not alone, even though you might be sitting alone in your house and in your room. You're not alone in this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And folks who have more time than usual in their hands can certainly make the most of it. And that's all some great advice there. Things like attending our discussion online right now over Zoom. So anyway, let's see.
Absolutely.
We've got about 10 minutes left, and then I've got to sign off at the top of the hour, but I want to make sure that we get to as many questions here as possible. So I'm going to run through some of these here. Speaking about tuition, we talked about a little bit about tuition, whether it may be the same or not in the fall if school is online. I'm wondering, we got a question from Vic here. Have you heard anything around schools potentially decreasing their tuition if it is in fact online? Or if demand drops hypothetically or something like that?
I have not heard, I don't think it's off the table. I have not heard specifically that might happen. I will say in the past, schools, again, with some of their creative thinking about, about how to get folks in, have employed reduced tuition. Not that long ago, they've done this. So I don't know the answer to your question. I don't know if I expect it or not, but it's certainly a possibility. And I think as schools start to consider, okay, my gosh, what are we going to do? That's going to be on their list, because I think that money, scholarship, that's one of the most important things that you all should be thinking about.
Yeah, definitely.
Total cost. I would say total cost, not just scholarship, not just tuition, total cost of what it's going to take to get to the school that you're looking at.
Right. Well, that's a good point. There's all the living costs and books and such. Yeah, it's not just the tuition itself.
Yeah.
So we got a question from Emily asking about a story that UCLA admissions, some offers of admission at UCLA law were apparently revoked due to the way in which students may have negotiated. Have you heard anything about that specific case?
Yeah, well, I don't know a lot about it, but I have heard that. Interesting. I was actually surprised by that, because we have had some clients who've successfully negotiated scholarships there this cycle. So I don't think that's a rule. So I'm also very curious about that, and I'm also curious about what more there is to that story. I don't know anything about that besides probably what you know. So I when I go back, I rewind my life back to my admission days, and I recall hundreds of scholarship negotiations, and it's all about how you ask sometimes, and it's all about the evidence that you provide to the schools as to how you're attempting to get additional funds. Some schools are just absolute, right? I think maybe Boston College comes to mind, but I don't know for sure. But they're, this is your scholarship award. We're not giving you any more. Please don't ask. That's fine. But for other schools, there often is an open door, and it's very important to ask in the right way, in a good way, in a respectful way, and providing proper evidence, which might be scholarship offers from other schools that are in a similar position.
Exactly. And providing evidence, as you said, things like expected cost of attendance based on cost of living in that area of the country, for example, relative to another offer, but not the time to play hardball. And you're not a lawyer yet. And these are human beings.
That, and you're dealing with, you have to remember that most admission committee the admission dean and most of the people that you're working with are attorneys. So, I mean, they respect the evidence that you're putting forward and your attempts, but you do have to be respectful of them and understand, your position as opposed to theirs.
Correct. And some of them are also yoga teachers.
Absolutely.
They're real people. They're real people. Yes. We got a question. We got a question from Aya here asking about schools taking the results of the June or July LSAT for finishing up this cycle, extending deadlines farther and farther. And I've heard them extend deadlines already for the May LSAT-Flex. A lot of them. My understanding is that it'll vary school by school depending on their situation. Do you have anything more to add on that?
I don't have much more. I'm looking at the question right now. I think you're absolutely right, Steve. I think it's school by school. I think communication with the admissions office is key. I definitely think, don't be afraid to be in touch with them and just let them know your situation and ask questions directly to them.
Right, exactly. And then back to the negotiation question, conditional scholarships that require certain GPA or standing in the class. How could one negotiate specifically to get those conditions removed, or is it really the same as anything else?
Yeah, I think that's probably a similar conversation that you have with them. Perhaps providing evidence and proof and information, that you choose to provide to kind of plead your case there, which might be comparable scholarship offers from other schools. And I do caution you about conditional scholarships. I think they're certainly with value, but just make sure you understand those conditions understand them well, and be careful with them and really understand kind of the value of them. And once again, I just if you're be respectful in your communication in all cases that I've witnessed. If you go in respectfully, you will be treated in kind. You may not get everything you want, but in my experience, admission folks are very nice, very human people, and they're trying to help you. They're really trying to help you get to where you want to go. They might be limited, but they're trying to help you.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
All right, let's see a couple more here. All right, last one here for tonight, and then folks can, of course, feel free to reach out to us for follow-ups. If you defer the LSAT, can you retake it to get a higher scholarship, and which one will count for U.S. News rankings?
I'm sorry, is this, I don't see the question here. Let's see. If you defer the LSAT, so if you defer your
offer of admission,
okay,
you then retake the LSAT and ask for a higher scholarship, and which LSAT score would be factored into the rankings?
Yeah. So if you would defer your admission and you take the LSAT again, I think that's absolutely fine. And know that you're committed to that school, right? So that's kind of the first. Just know what you're committed to, and maybe have a conversation with them. I know I've been saying that a lot, but maybe have a conversation with them and say, I'm deferring. I'm considering, taking. I'm excited to go. I plan on going. I'm considering taking the LSAT again because I'm interested in more scholarship funds, and see what they say. And it's. I think that you're in a good and bad position, because on one hand, they have kind of your commitment that you're going to the school. So they may be considering, okay, they're coming here. How much more do we have to give them? They're already coming here, that kind of equation. They're not allowed to go anywhere else if they're asking for a deferment. But on the other hand, they're also probably trying to be very fair. And so if you do increase your LSAT, they may very well consider, giving you a more generous scholarship in alignment with other folks who have a increased LSAT score. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Thank you for that.
Yeah, but I would be in communication with them and just, feel them out and see what they say. What's the harm, right? I mean, that's one of the things that, when you correspond with admissions office, a lot of times there's no harm in it. It's not going to hurt you,
Yeah, and as always, there's a lot of value in getting that LSAT score.
Yeah,
really opens doors and
Yeah.
opens wallets too.
And if you're, one thing, if you're sure that you're going to get a better LSAT score, with caution, maybe the right thing is to reapply. If you had a real bad LSAT day and you can get, without a better score, without any promises for the next cycle, maybe that's something you consider with a lot of thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. To increase the scholarship specifically, and maybe to get into a school that is more of your dream school than the one that you're already planning to go to.
Right. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, we're about up for tonight, but this has been a lot of fun. Ali, thank you so much for this great conversation and all the great advice that you shared with the audience. And thanks for all the great questions, everyone. Ali, do you want to share the best way for folks to get in touch with you to find out more about working with you or for follow-ups?
Absolutely. So we are at www.stratusadmissionscounseling.com. And that's our website. You can go there to schedule a free 30-minute consult with us. We'd be very happy to answer more questions for you there. I can be reached directly at ali.nash@stratusadmissions.com, or you can email, of course, info@stratusadmissions.com.
And folks can find me, Steve Schwartz, of course, at the LSAT blog, as well as the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel and podcast, Facebook group, Instagram, all that good stuff. I'm out there putting out information constantly about the LSAT-Flex changes as well as everything else. And I actually put together a playlist specifically on the YouTube channel at bit.ly/LSAT-Flex, where folks can find out more about all the recent changes. I'm constantly adding more to it. I'll be in touch with everyone over email as well. So thanks for coming, everyone, for all the great questions. Thank you, Ali. Have a good night.
Thank you all so much.
Bye, everyone.
Such a pleasure. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.